Passed out of Ahmedabad in 1992, and post that I went into commercial banking first. Spent a lot of my career with Credit Suisse and HSBC, with a few other stints in between. And for a long time after that, did nothing that was remotely finance. Should marketing people not think of work in the mutual fund industry? Of course they should, right? Because if you think of Unilever as a marketing job, but you also manufacture soap and shampoo.
So, in the times where there have been a huge number of unicorns in the country emerging, and the two terms which are investment banking and venture capital, everyone knows about these two terms. However, the thing is that no one exactly knows what these things mean, and there is a hype around all both the terms. So today we have someone who is expert in this field and has work experience for many years in venture capital and investment banking. Thank you, Dev Raman sir, for joining us and giving your time.
Most welcome. Thank you for having me.
So before deep diving into these specific terms and all the finance world we have, we would like to know about your journey. How has it been? And since you are an alumni of IIM Ahmedabad as well, so we'd like to know about that as well.
Well, I mean, Ahmedabad was a long time ago. So, and, so I think I passed out of Ahmedabad in 1992. And post that, I went into commercial banking first, which is banking as you know it, branches and all of that. But then that was the period when India was opening up, the economy was liberalizing, and foreign investors were allowed into India for the first time. Private sector mutual funds were allowed. So I think in some ways we were very lucky to be in that period. And opportunities opened up in the markets that didn't exist before that. So as a 23-year-old, you were probably one of the most experienced people in the field. It was a funny period, and so I got into investment banking from the institutional brokerage side, and that's what kind of opened up first in the country, and that's what I was involved with. Spent a lot of my career with Credit Suisse and HSBC, with a few other stints in between. I then had the opportunity to set up and manage a hedge fund, which was an exciting thing to do. This was also the time when, Indian markets had futures and options for the first time. So hedging was even a possibility. So we ran one of India's first genuine long-short funds. And then in 2009, along with my partners, I set up Lastaki, which is a boutique investment bank that works with largely, I think, with first-generation entrepreneurs, to help them in that journey of creating very successful and sustainable companies. You use the term unicorn, and I kind of think that these terms can distract people from the whole process of building companies that last for a long time. These are kind of goals that come and go because they're so dependent on valuations and markets value, but the way markets value companies. But the real, sustainability of companies comes from how strong their operations are and how They can survive cycles. And that's the kind of companies we want to try and build or help build. And that's really why we set up Lastagi. That's what I've been doing for 15 years now.
Okay.
Amazing. So, like we were discussing that the purpose of doing this was actually to help us as well as people around our age who are students, non-students also, who would just want to know what they would want to do professionally in life. So there's a lot of questions around investment banking and venture capital. But I would just, before that, for if I think as a student, how did you realize that finance was for you?
You guys were talking to me about this before we started recording. And, my question to people often is banking finance? And I don't know if it is. I mean, yes, I mean, you have to understand businesses through numbers, or in the context, or you have to understand numbers in the context of business. But at the end of the day, you're understanding business,
Yes.
right? And this is where I think, to me, I mean, for everyone who's doing an MBA, is that focus a little less on the specialization and focus more on understanding business overall. That's actually what an MBA really lets you do, right? And I think it's actually understanding the different facets of business and how they come together. That's critical. Then in your profession, you may choose to approach it from various aspects, right? I mean, if you think about the mutual fund industry, for example, the marketing of a mutual fund to raise capital is as important, if not more important, than the investing of the funds,
Yeah.
which arguably is a finance function, which I don't think really is a finance function, but arguably is still a finance function, right? So should marketing people not think of work in the mutual fund industry? Of course they should, right? Because if you think of Unilever as a marketing job, but you also manufacture soap and shampoo, right? So it's not only marketing, right?
Yeah.
But so and mutual funds are similar, for example. So the point I'm trying to make here is, I went in. You're right. I actually went into banking, thinking I wanted to be a finance person, and for a long time after that, did nothing that was remotely finance. Retail banking was operations largely, right? And then I was in institutional broking, which was about, of course, understanding markets and talking about them to investors and things about that, like that. But was I doing hardcore finance? No, I wasn't. Right? So in funny ways, so I ended up doing all of this without really having a plan, I think.
Yeah.
So the thing you are saying is that just go with the flow. I mean,
No, I'm not. I'm saying that, look, there are certain generalizations that are not completely correct. I mean, FMCG is marketing and banking is finance. Where does that put insurance? I mean, I don't know. Or something else is tech, and people say tech people work in tech industries, but so much about running a tech company is about selling tech.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
selling such an important part of that business, so much about all of these companies eventually is HR, right? So I'm just saying that when you're young, and this is fine, and that's the way we were, and that's the way you all will be. You work with a certain notion. All I'm telling you is when you get into the real world, you'll see that various avenues will open up that may have been very different from what you thought of when you start your career. So nothing is a kind of career defining. There won't be one career defining moment. So don't worry if you're not doing exactly what you wanted.
Yeah, correct.
I think though finance, I mean, you said that though you did chose finance, but you were not in finance for most of the time. Though we consider it a finance field, right? So, but I think that investment banking, when you talk about investment banking and venture capital, they are like hardcore finance. And if you talk about investment banking, no person except a finance guy who's largely interested in both of these will ever dream of doing this, because the thing which people have created about investment banking, about the huge number of hours they have to put in, stressful environment, then numbers, then like sharks in the Wall Street and everything. The movies have also created these. So what do you think about that?
I don't think there's any need for all that. I mean, I really don't think so. I honestly think you can be a nice guy and be an investment banker, right? And why not? But I think that, look, for most part, when we say, you said hardcore finance, right?
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing, even in what we do, is understanding a business, right? And understanding different aspects of a business. So, let's say someone who made a call on Nvidia, for example, right? If they were making that call 5 years ago, they didn't need to understand finance. Somewhere they needed to understand that we would need a lot more, processing computing capability than we do today.
True.
You didn't really need to get into the balance sheet of Nvidia to make a call on it at that point.
Yes.
Probably if you had, you might not have bought into it, right? So I'm just saying that, look, these areas don't fall into these buckets. Do you need to have a certain comfort with numbers? Yes. Do you need to have the ability to, what I say is, do numbers tell you a story? So I think that when you look at the financial statements of a company, when you look at numbers, are they telling you a story about what's happening, right? And if they are, then I think you'd be very good at analyzing businesses through the lens of numbers, right? If that is finance, then yes, what we do is finance. Okay. But to me, we are analyzing businesses. What is even more important is that we are understanding entrepreneurs. And very often we're making that call, right? Especially on the venture capital side. A lot of the call is whether the entrepreneur we're backing is going to be able to deliver on what they're saying. So, one of the things I say is that analysts or investors, bet with probability. Entrepreneurs bet against probability. Okay, so you're taking a non-probabilistic situation and saying, I can make this happen.
Okay.
Right? It's like, Mahendra Singh Dhoni taking an innings right down to the last 2 overs and saying, I have the confidence that I can turn out 30 runs in the last 2 overs whenever I want. It's a non-probabilistic situation, but it's the faith in your own ability to do it and the ability then to deliver on it, right? So very often you're making that call, which is about understanding the person or the set of people. You're not working with a lot of numbers,
Yeah.
right? If we were working with only numbers, then a lot of us would come up with the same answers.
Yeah.
Why do some people back certain businesses while other very good investors don't get it at that point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I just think that, look, there is a belief that, oh, if I'm very good with numbers, I'll be very good with finance. But I think in the real world, you've got to mix that ability to be very good with numbers and apply it to many things seamlessly. And you're doing that all the time. And to understand the people in that context who are in that situation, and to say, can they move from point A to point B? And this is what we do as investment bankers in a way. This is what we do as investors, which is we're always trying to say, look, this is where the company is. This is where it wants to go. Is it a good story to back?
So, in investment banking, how a person, if I'm starting my career in investment banking or I'm about to start, so what do you think the skill sets are required to enter in this field, and what are the things which you have to be ready for to do, whether it may come or not?
So I think, look, in any field, right, when you're starting, the important thing is to get the mechanics extremely strong. So, if you think about investment banking and say you start as an associate or as an analyst, whatever, that's the point where you're actually spending a lot of time making models, right? Now, one, of course, is that you learn the process of making models extremely well. So, because that kind of really sets that foundation, which as you go along, you will do less and less of because others will do it. But you need to know how models work to be able to, as I said, look at numbers and get the story behind them, right? So the mechanics is what you learn as a young person. But the thing is that at every stage of your career, if you're actually preparing yourself for the next stage, so you are working with a supervisor or let's say a super boss, and you are seeing what they do. And I think what's useful is to play a little game with yourself where you kind of say, okay, can I think about what they will say when, this goes up to them? Or can I kind of say, what will my supervisor or his or her supervisor say? And in that process, build that ability to analyze, to understand, right? So when you're an associate, if, for example, if you're making PowerPoint presentations, right? And I think, and I guess they don't make that many PowerPoint presentations anymore, but you're making presentations. But do you even focus on, look, what are we saying here? And why are we saying it this way? And is this the best way, or is there a better way? Can I add some value here? And I think this is something that sounds like, okay, this is an old man talking. But, I just think if you keep your mind open at all points on what you're doing, and if you kind of focus and think, that really sets you up for the biggest skill you will need in your career, which is the ability to think at all points.
Yeah.
And that's not something actually your immediate boss is going to ask you to do, because very often they want you to complete the task, right? But no one's stopping you from thinking.
Yeah.
Right?
So considering I would want to go into finance, but I do not know what all fields do really exist. Like, so I would just want to ask you, what fields actually exist, and in the coming years, what do you think as a student I should think for that? That's where I would want to venture into.
Look, I think, again, the two separate questions here. So
Yeah.
the first is what fields exist. And so I don't know if I'm giving you a comprehensive answer, but very broadly, I would say that there are four broad areas that I see today. I mean, one is, corporate finance, or, working in the finance department of large companies. And I think that's a super exciting space to be if you go beyond making accounts and getting them audited.
Yeah.
And to me, and I know a lot of my peers will not like this, but that is accounting, it's not finance.
Yeah.
And I think if you kind of, actually say, and that's really what I wanted to do when I left campus, which is actually work in the finance department and help kind of make business decisions on the back of numbers that came out of the accounting function. And I think that's a super important, super exciting space to be. Then if you look at the whole, then you have the investment banking, which really, to me, is intermediation, right? So you intermediate between companies and other companies, or companies and investors, right? So in some shape or form, I mean, so I think being a broker is the wrong word, but you're an intermediary, right? But I think it's an interesting field because you kind of work with multiple companies, you help them achieve their strategic objectives. If you do it well, and the way I think it's meant to be done, then you actually add a lot of value to a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs, right? Within that is the whole field of investment advisory, stockbroking, which is really working with the other side, which is working with large investors and helping them invest in the right places, right? Then you have the whole investment side, which is, goes right from, let's say, wealth management to mutual funds to venture capital, private equity, hedge funds. So again, each one of these is different, very different in what you do, very different. Then you have equity and debt and various asset classes now and all of that, right? So that is a whole different space, right? And each of those subspaces within that is a space in itself, right? And then you have the whole large world of insurance, which is opening up, which I think is something that people don't focus enough on, but is going to be a very large industry in India, and is going to be something that's going to grow for many, many years. So again, that's a whole area that I think is open. All of these are large spaces, so there's enough opportunity. I'm sure there are some that I'm not even talking about at this point. So there are going to be lots of spaces. Now, you asked me about what you need to focus on. See, if you want to broadly be in this world of finance, if you like, I think the prerequisite is to get the basics right? To be extremely comfortable with numbers, to get the, how financial, statements work. But I think it's not just about how are they made, but what do they mean?
Yeah.
You know, what's the interlinkage between the P&L balance sheet and a cash flow statement? And how do you kind of figure out what's happening in a business by looking at all of this, right? And to me, those are the mechanics. For everybody who's good in this space, that will become second nature. That's a given, right? And at this point, I think that's what you can work on. The rest will come as you go with experience, I think.
And so there are many certifications which are important these days, like CFA we have. So many companies also shortlist students based on CFA and other certificates. So what do you think for an investment banking job or entry level jobs, is CFA an important part to so that the students can enroll into these kind of certificates or not?
Well, in Lastaki and Triton, which are businesses I help manage, an MBA is not compulsory, but CFA is.
Oh.
Okay.
We don't. Everyone here has to do a CFA. I think I think it really helps get your mechanics sorted. And I think and that's very hard to teach on the job, and then if your mechanics are faulty, then very often you're building on a faulty base. Right? So I think even if you do an MBA, if you want a career in investments, investment banking, equity research, all of these areas, CFA is pretty critical. I think almost compulsory.
Okay.
And so talking about your two organizations where you're partner, right? Lastaki and Triton. So one of the best things which I came across when I was going through the website was that there it is written that we gain when you gain, or the company gains, right? So how does your organization function? Talking about Lastaki as advisors to companies or particularly startups. So how the whole thing works?
How does it work? What, financially? Or?
No, as in what advices and what are the problems these companies face, and for that they come to advisors like Lastaki and other.
So look, so Lastaki is an investment bank. So as I said, we're basically intermediaries, right?
Yeah.
So companies will come to us typically. Okay, what companies will pay us for, okay, is for either raising capital or helping them do M&A, for example, right? So want to sell their business or they want to buy a business, something like that. But the advice could be manifold, right? Because very often we are talking to businesses for 5 years, 7 years before they pay us a rupee.
Okay.
Because that's when they either wanted capital or they decided to use us, or there was a M&A conversation to be had. And in that period, the advice could be many, many things. And some of it we would be able to give ourselves, some of it we would connect them to people who can give it. But the idea is, so one of my clients described us as his family doctor. And in some ways, I think it's one of the best descriptions I've had of what we do, right? So he said, look, I have a problem, I throw it at you, then you tell me who to go to. So what people come to us with, but eventually what they pay us for, are two very different things. But what we also have is a consulting practice, which is in Lastaki, which works with companies on growth and profitability. Because even though as an investment bank we get paid when people raise capital, we believe that businesses should raise as little capital as possible, because that's the most the best way to create value for founders and shareholders, right? And this is something that we passionately believe in. So if through our consulting practice, we're able to help companies become more efficient and raise less capital, that's a great outcome as far as we are concerned. As a company, one of our, you might have seen this on our website as well, we have this thing called the 100 for 100.
Yeah.
And the 100 for 100 is actually is something that we coined around 2015 to 17 type period, where everyone was going crazy about valuations and unicorns and all of this. And we said, how much money are people taking home? So how, and what are we thinking about cash flows? So we said that we want to help 100 entrepreneurs take home their first 100 crores.
Okay.
Because the first 100 crores that any entrepreneur takes home, really no other money that you take home will make as much difference as that. And 100 is just a number, but it's the first big payday you have. After that, all the rest of the money is incremental. It's not making such a big difference. You already have all the money you need, right? But when you help entrepreneurs generate that cash, that they can de-risk themselves, their families, all of that, that's when they can think about really building out big businesses after that. And that's why we set ourselves that mission rather than a mission of creating unicorns and things like that. Because we thought that one should focus entrepreneurs on the right thing, which is cash generation.
So also talking about the entrepreneurs which we have these days. So in our generation particularly, there is a huge inclination towards being entrepreneurs and going towards starting their own ventures. So you have come across many entrepreneurs in your journey. So what are the few things which entrepreneurs generally get wrong?
I think, look, I think you're right. There are a lot more entrepreneurs, and in some ways, it's much easier to be an entrepreneur because there's access to capital, there's access to formal mentoring. There are, there's a lot more help today. The whole ecosystem for entrepreneurs. What do entrepreneurs get wrong? I think, look, like most fads, right? Where people get into it for the wrong reason. Okay. Is really where things start going south. Okay. Entrepreneurship extremely tough, and there will be terrible days, and you will feel very, very defeated at various points. You'll be very, very lonely. Things will look very bleak at various points, right? So if you've not gotten into something because there is a deep passion to build it, okay, but if it was just because you said, oh, look, I can create a company, get valuations and make a lot of money, then in those very dark periods, you will actually really, really struggle. Right? You will not even know how to get yourself out of that. But if you went into something which is an idea that you're extremely passionate about, that you're very clear about, that you have the skill sets to actually be in that space, then through those very tough times, you probably have the best chance of all the other people in the industry who are going through those tough times to pull yourself out. Right? So again, my view is that, look, like most glamorous things, it's not glamorous at all when you're inside. 90% of new businesses fail.
Yeah.
right? We only hear of the successful ones,
Yeah.
right? So you have to really love what you do, because the chances of success are so few that you just have to be in it for the love of being able to do it,
Yeah, true.
you know? So you have to wait till you find that before you become an entrepreneur. I mean, I had a kid call me the other day saying, I'm passionate about startups. And I said, that's not something you can be passionate about. You can be passionate about an idea,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know. That makes sense,
True.
you know. You can't just be passionate about all startups. That's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
you can also just explain us in simple words, like layman terms, what investment banker does and what a venture capitalist does.
Okay. So, look, at a very base level, both of them are trying to identify very attractive businesses. And I'm generalizing because investment banking or investing can have nuances to it. But, you know, in general, you're trying to identify businesses that you think will do extremely well. The investment banker tends to be the problem solver for the company. So they don't really invest, but they work with the company to kind of help them articulate their long-term plans, identify what capital needs might be, what kind of strategic partnerships they might need, all of that stuff, and then try and help them execute along those plans, right?
Yeah.
So from a skill set perspective, probably there is that need to be analytical enough to understand what businesses are worth working with and what are not, because you have to pick good clients. And but then it also involves the ability to form relationships of trust, because somebody is going to trust you to be their advisor and to, you know, these tend to be exclusive relationships. So the client is also choosing to work only with you. It's not that they're working with 10 people. And then you have to, you know, have the ability to execute solutions for them, right? Investing is also identifying the right, you know, companies. But I think the one key difference in investing is that it also needs a knack of understanding what is a money making situation. You know, because a very good business at the wrong price is also not a money making situation, right? So you need, as an investor, to have, and that's a slightly different skill than being an analyst.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not a skill CFA or MBA or anything will give you. That's an innate skill that you get. Very important. If you either develop it or you don't.
Yeah.
So you said that this skill you can't learn in CF or MBA. So how a person should develop it, or how to try to develop it?
Or is
Well,
it,
yeah, sorry.
or is it innate by nature?
No, I don't think it's innate. I don't think we're born with money making skills, at least.
Yeah.
Maybe. By that count, I should not have been managing any money. But I think the closest I've come to describing a method to that is to say that every manager only understands certain asset classes and understands certain situations. Okay. So, like most things in life, learning what you're going to say no to is more important than what you're going to say yes to.
Absolutely.
Right? As an investor, you're going to say no to at least 90% of the things that come to you.
Yeah.
Right? So, if something, so you may know, like if you think of Triton, which is our VC arm, we only do B2B tech. That's all we do, because our view is it's a big enough space. We think we understand that well. We think we understand that better than a lot of other people, and therefore it gives us an edge to producing superior returns. There are other spaces that others clearly understand better than we do.
Yeah.
You know, and those are great spaces as well. The whole non-tech world, or even B2C tech, there are just others who understand that a lot better than we do, and we just stay away from it. So I think it's a lot of understanding yourself, understanding what you seem to understand, and then you develop your own thesis of what makes money for you. What are the important markers? What situations can you identify where you see returns? Stick to that. And that's the closest I've come to putting any kind of system around this very fuzzy area of the knack of making good investments.
Okay.
So, any books you recommend, like about finance or investing or any of those, which helps a person, even if a starter or a person who is doing business or into the finance field for a long time, which can help him in certain one or other way?
Look, I'm not going to name any books, but what I'm going to say is this, because I say this to everybody in my company as well. See, today we all get a crazy amount of content,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And reading is a good skill, but reading is also a way to lull yourself into thinking you're doing something useful. Okay. So the key thing is that whatever you read, how much time after reading it did you spend, or while reading it, did you spend thinking about what you're reading?
Yeah.
That's it.
And what is your takeaway from it? Not what is the author necessarily trying to say. The author could be saying whatever they're trying to say. But that plus your own thoughts and your experiences, what is the thesis you are evolving for yourself?
Yeah.
Right? I think that is when reading becomes valuable. So somebody forwards a 50-page article on our company WhatsApp group, then my question to them is, can you also send me a note on why I should be reading this? Because clearly, you forwarded it. So, I assume you've read it. You found some great nuggets here. Can you write me a short note on that as well? Because this is 50 pages. Right? So I think, look, I think reading is productive only if you put a lot of thinking behind that reading.
Yeah. Right.
True.
Amazing, sir. Yeah. We definitely had a lot of questions, but a lot has actually been answered. We just wanted to thank you for your valuable time.
No, this was fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.